Ronin Audiobooks presents Pumping My Way, written by Nathan LeBlanc. It's read and performed by Nathan with a little help from his friends.
This story of my life is dedicated to my wife Marla and my children, Alina and Hunter.
Chapter 1, Trapped in the Inferno.
Do you smell gas? Before the other four bodybuilders in the van could answer me, the van's interior engine burst into flame. Vic pulls the emergency brake and jumps out, but he didn't pull it hard enough, so we're still rolling on the freeway over-ramp. I see Jason, who's in the passenger seat, jump out. Vic left the engine running, so the gasoline keeps flowing, feeding the fire, filling his van with flames and smoke. The interior is all lined, floor, wall, ceiling, and engine, with 4-inch long shag carpets that the fire quickly feeds on.
I can't leave my wife and kid.
Frank jumps up. He scrambles past me, knocking off my glasses, making me practically blind. He hits the back door of the van with a judo chop. Some way, the door opens, and he gets through the small opening, jumps outside and runs down the freeway. Flames and smoke quickly block the small opening that he passed through. I move to my knees and pull down on the latch to the double doors as the fire quickly surrounds me, and my friend Rich and I push on the doors, but they only open a few inches. Panicking, Rich charges the doors with his head and bounces back, almost knocking himself out. Next, I feel his foot on my shoulders as he pushes his way out through the top of the partially open doors. When Jason gets out, I hear him scream.
Nathan's still inside.
I push on the doors. Jason looks into the crack and sees me with my eyes bulging, taking my last breath. He grabs the handles of the jammed doors, pulls on them so hard that his forearm snaps and breaks. The left side of my body is covered in flames. My right side is covered with smoke. The thought flashes through my mind. I'm the oldest, and the others are safe, so I guess it's okay to end my life here. I sat back on my haunches and looked up to see what appeared to be a laser beam of light coming through the fire and smoke. It's a beam of light made by the partially open doors. It's a space to the outside, but I think to myself, it's too small for me to fit through. Then it happens. Something. I will never find out what it is. I see a white beam of light in my mind's eye, and something propels me up through that impossible slim opening of light. But I'm stuck at my waist. Only half of my body outside, and the flames continue to lash out at my legs. Outside on the ramp, Frank turns and runs back to the van. He looks up and sees me with my head and my chest sticking out of the doors. But I'm still stuck, and I can't get out. I feel a fire in my legs, and I see my buddies looking up helplessly at me. Suddenly, the van explodes, and I shoot 15 feet up into the air. I see the edge of the freeway ramp from the sky. It's a long drop. As I descend towards it, my martial arts instincts take over, and I land on my feet in a cat stance, right next to the railing, with my thighs touching the railing wall and my eyes looking down at the traffic below, traveling at 65 miles per hour. I turn around and run back to where my friends were. The heat from the fire is tremendous, and the van is now completely engulfed in flames. We all hug each other and run away from the van. Before the fire engines can arrive, the van melts to the ground with the four of us watching. Then I think, 4? There were 5 of us. Hey, where's Vic?
I don't know.
I saw him get out, but he's gone.
Later, the police find Vic walking around downtown 5 miles away. He's in shock and he's in a trance. An ambulance takes the 4 of us to the hospital. The doctor carefully peels off my clothes. They're not burnt, but my skin is. My girlfriend Marla, who is often very psychic, knows nothing of the incidents. But At that exact moment, she has a problem breathing. She tells me about that later. In the hospital, I'm thinking, 1 minute I'm on my way to a bodybuilding competition with my friends, and the next minute I'm trapped in a fire, and then some unknown power propels me through an opening that was humanly impossible to get through. I would reflect on that magical power many times in the future with a mixture of gratitude and fear. From then on, anytime I hear Jimmy Dean sing Big Bad John on an oldie station, I get the shivers.
And someone yelled out, "There's a light up above," and 4 men scrambled from that would-be grave. Now there's only one left inside to save Big Nathan.
Chapter 2. Why are you reading this?
Hello, listeners. I'm Nathan LeBlanc. And yes, that van on fire story really happened. And so did the rest of the wild stories that I will tell you in this book. All true, I promise. If you're reading this, you're either a loved one relative, someone I'm training, a good friend, or someone I just met and handed this book to. Either way, I really appreciate you taking the time to read about my life adventures. Yes, I'm a bodybuilder, but that's not all. I never won the Mr. Universe competition, but I did achieve Mr. Novice California and 7 other titles. Never starred in a Terminator movie, but I did kick some butt in some action movies, and in some cases got my butt kicked in them. I never governed a state, but I did help a lot of people by training them and showing them the advantages of living clean and healthy. Never made $50 million, but my lifestyle has been productive and prosperous. Physical fitness has been my life in the past, present, and will continue in the future. As you continue reading on, I promise you some wild stories, some surprises, and my personal philosophy on bodybuilding and life because, like Arnold, the top guy in the sport, I also have total recall.
Chapter 3. Unchained in Oakland.
Sylvester Stallone sat in a theater as a teenager watching the champion bodybuilder Steve Reeves in Hercules. Stallone was amazed at what he was seeing. Reeves not only had the best body in the world he had ever seen up until then, and as handsome as 10 movie stars. After the movie, Stallone walked out the door into the night and muttered to himself, "Sly, do you want to be a bum or be like Steve Reeves?" 2 years later, by the time Steve Reeves was back in the theaters with Hercules in chains, Stallone was well on his way to sculpturing his body that would help make him famous. I, Nathan LeBlanc, was enchained into this life in the very town where Steve Reeves trained in to become a world champion bodybuilder and movie star, Oakland, California. But I grew up in Hayward. My parents, Nathan Joseph and Gertrude LeBlanc, were both terrific people of French and American Indian descent. Dad was a custom furniture upholsterer, one of the best in the Bay Area, and he also had a degree in radio and television and electronics. He often said, "If something is working, don't take it apart. If you do something, do it to the best you can. Don't Mickey Mouse anything. That way, you don't have to redo it." Mother worked at a famous candy factory called Kyoto Candy Company in Oakland. They made everything from licorice to peanut brittle. Ironically, not exactly in keeping with the diet of a future bodybuilder. But at that time, I didn't know my future or destiny. My mother came from a large family. So did my father. We were all extremely loving, with everyone dancing, eating, hugging, and kissing all the time. While my parents worked, my mother's sister, Aunt Iona, raised all 5 of us cousins. I was very close to her. She was a delightful person, always positive, just like everyone else in our entire family. At an early age, I loved dancing. I had a lot of female cousins who listened to music. I became a great dancer because I often danced with them. I preferred hanging around with women because the guys I knew were always complaining about something. Their coach, their teacher, their parents. I also pushed the guys on my various high school teams very hard. I wanted them to do their best, just as I had tried to do my best. So they had that to complain about as well. I went to a Catholic grammar school, and I got a strong foundation of spirituality in my life. The result of that foundation kept me very honest. I never cheated or lied. I could have been a multimillionaire many times over, but I refused to lie in business, so I would never sell an idea, product, or service that wasn't what it actually represented itself to be. I'd never tell a customer that a used Ford was really a Cadillac, as I've seen many businessmen do. Also, I figured that most people had my beliefs, so I mistakenly trusted business people too much. Many times I ran my ideas of products or services past people. These people then took the idea and ran away with them, cashed in on them, and never looked back to where the idea came from. For the most part, I grew up with guys older and bigger than me. I grew up in 2 different high schools, and going from grammar school to junior high school, I had to take the bus to another junior high school. Guys didn't like it and often challenged me to fight, but I had no problem fighting them. When I got back to my own neighborhood high school, I was an outsider to them, so I had to fight them as well. So for 2 years, I was fighting guys from 50 pounds to 100 pounds bigger than me. It was pretty good training, I tell you. Growing up, for some reason, I always gravitated to older and elderly people. I guess it was their quiet wisdom and worldly experience that interested me in them. Their life stories fascinated me, and they are always as eager to talk as I was to listen. I was fortunate to have my Uncle Numa take me under his wing. He was a very educated man. When he was in the army stationed in Germany, he played keyboards for Elvis Presley. Uncle Numa took me places around the Bay Area and introduced me to many cultural things that I had no idea about. Arts, music, poetry, classic, and jazz music. Johnny Mathis, Tony Bennett, and fine restaurants. He took me up to Telegraph Hill in San Francisco to see the view from Coit Tower. He also took me to many places in San Francisco and even to Hawaii. The most important thing he gave me was a motto for me to follow my whole life. Good, better, best. Never let it rest. Always try to make your good be better and to better your best. Of course, even with my early introduction to finer things in life, my spirituality and training and a sense of responsibility. I got myself into trouble a few times, as a normal kid would do. But it wasn't always my spirituality that kept me from getting into too much trouble. My interest in girls ran a strong second to raising hell with my friends, or maybe even came in first. At any rate, in my book, girls beat getting into trouble with guys any day of the week. In high school, some guys wanted me to help them rob a small local grocery store. I told them, "What are you talking about? We go into that store every day. It's stupid to do that." On that night, I went on a date and to the movies. Those guys went into the back of the store through a window and stole some cigarettes and soda. The owners of the store, who lived upstairs, heard them in the store below, called the police, and the guys were caught and arrested. I was embarrassed for them, and even embarrassed to know them. Of course, I wasn't a complete altar boy. I did get into some minor scraps. One time when I was around 12 years old, I snuck into my neighbor's backyard to swim in their pool when they were away. The problem was, it was covered with a canvas tarp. Well, that wasn't going to stop me, so I slipped under the canvas at the edge of the pool and started swimming underwater. When I needed to come up for air, boy, did I get a surprise. There was water on the top of the canvas, so when I tried to push it up, I couldn't make a space between me and the water. So there was no air to be had. Man, I had to do some quick underwater breaststroking to get to the back edge of the pool to grab some air and get my lungs refilled. Did it scare me? Sure, but it also taught me a lesson, that if I ever got into trouble, it was up to me, and only me, to get myself out. So I survived water that time, and years later I would survive fire via the van accident. Later I would have to survive wind, but I tell you about that in another natural elements later. As far as the natural element earth goes, I was always comfortable on it. Football field, track field, that earth was mine. I was like Antaeus in Greek mythology, who challenged everyone he met to wrestling matches and couldn't be beaten, as long as he was in contact with the earth. I learned about him when I saw Steve Reeves defeat him by throwing him into the sea in Hercules Unchained. I, too, steer clear of water. Antaeus was the son of Poseidon, king of the ocean, but water was his nemesis. I'm a Pisces, a water sign, but for me, water is for hydrating my body, not getting it wet. Years later, when I heard about what happened to my hero Steve Reeves, I could relate to it. I heard Steve Reeves himself tell the story.
I was making a movie, The Last Days of Pompeii, when I injured my shoulder in a chariot accident. Then came the final shot in the production. Oil was put on the top of a lake of water, set on fire, and I had to dive in and swim under it. While breaststroking under the fire, I could feel my shoulder muscles tearing apart. But I couldn't stop and come up for air in the oil fire, so I kept swimming and injured my shoulder for life.
In Steve Reeves' case, it was both fire and water that caused him damage, forcing him to retire from starring in movies early in his career. I always remember that story when I started appearing in movies. A movie set can be a dangerous workplace, and doing stunts is dangerous in itself. But in high school, I had no idea that I'd be making movies or that I'd be a bodybuilder. In high school, I was just interested in sports in general. Every sport there was, except for swimming, of course. Hayward I had a gorgeous campus with 5,000 students. It had 2 football fields, buildings with beautiful Roman columns, and a nearby creek, where I often sat and chatted with friends. My science teacher, from Sweden, was a very handsome 6-foot-tall man. He was also the track coach and was training himself for long-distance running for the 1968 Olympics. My other coach, Mr. Mahana, could outrun a horse, even with only one lung. He was famous for that. When students saw those 2 coaches running around the track, they were very impressed. I remember talking with my science teacher when I asked him, "What track event do you think I'd be good at?" He said,
Well, try out all the sports and see what happens.
So I ran track, threw the discus, ran the hurdles, high jumped, pole vaulted, and broad jumped. I had to train myself on all of them. With lots of practice, it turned out that I was good at all of them. So I concentrated on wrestling, football, and track. That was the beginning of my love of sports and physical training. I'm a high-energy person, so a sport like baseball, unless you're throwing or catching the ball, would have been very boring for me. I like individual sports as opposed to team sports. Because I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was lucky to train with famous athletes in both football and wrestling. So now I had a direction, something to use my natural self-discipline on. Sports was it for me. My life became all about takedowns, touchdowns, and seconds.
Chapter 4. touchdowns every time I got the ball.
Of course, I didn't cross the goal line every time I got my hands on the pigskin, but that was my mindset. Other guys just tried for yardage. I wasn't interested in yardage. I was only interested in making touchdowns. This football field is mine, I would think to myself. I had to be the very best that I could be, no matter what sport I was playing at the moment. In my mind, I only had one weakness: kryptonite. In high school, because I had fought guys bigger and older than me, I had no fear. With my spiritual background and no fear of people pushing me into drugs or other negative elements. No one can tempt me into things. I didn't want to get into smoking, drinking, so I chose clean living and didn't want any negative environment or people in my life. I was very inquisitive with all of my teachers and asked questions that others my age wouldn't think to ask. I didn't know what the future held for me, so I wanted to know what would or could be in store for me. In my senior year, I took a test to find out the occupation that would best suit me, and the results were that I would either be a fireman or a priest. Either save souls or lives. I had a fear of fire. As far as for being a priest, I already had a car, which was a hotel on wheels, meaning that I always had a girlfriend. Sports, girls, dancing, and fighting were my pastimes. So that left the priesthood in the dust. So no matter what that test told me, in my own heart, I knew that I would be some sort of professional athlete. Actually, because I always watched boxing on TV with my dad, I wanted to be the heavyweight champion of the world like Joe Louis. I just liked that title, but at 5'10", 170 pounds, I wasn't big enough. My high school sweetheart was a petite brunette, a girl with a perfect figure. Her name was Cindy. She was a talented artist who won many awards. She also designed our high school yearbook and class ring. She was a cheerleader, very athletic. So we were a perfect match. Unfortunately, when we graduated from high school, we went to different colleges. So at the end of summer of high school, we had to separate. At Chabot Junior College, I concentrated on football to test myself, to see if I really had the stuff to become a professional football player. I immediately became first string on the team, despite the fact that I was competing with great athletes from other states. I figured with a few thousand people at Chabot College that no one had ever heard of me. My parents never subscribed to a newspaper, and I never watched TV. So I didn't know that I was in the sports news and newspapers almost weekly. When my name was announced at the first sports rally, as the team was introduced, being a local guy and in the papers, I got the biggest cheer of anyone. Man, was I surprised, and happily so. I didn't know the media was that powerful. In my senior year, I played fullback all year, and at the end of the year, the coaches got together and counted up the performance of each player. It was decided that even at 168 pounds, I was second in rushing and receiving, second in touchdowns, and in average yards. An excellent record for a lightweight player like me. I figured that I would receive the title of All-League, meaning that I would be considered to be the best player in my league in my position. So I asked my coach, why hadn't I been chosen? He answered,
"You're a fantastic player, Nathan, but because of your size, we had to give it to someone who had more potential than you."
They gave it to a guy who was 6'2" and 225 pounds, even though I beat his performance in every single category. This was my first introduction to politics and sports. After the football season ended, I didn't have any sports to participate in, so my brother-in-law said,
Nathan, why don't you come to the gym with me?
I didn't know what kind of a gym it was, but I said sure. It turned out to be a weightlifting gym dedicated to both bodybuilding, powerlifting, and professional wrestlers. The Rock's father trained there, Dwayne Johnson Sr., Ray Stevens, Pepper Gomez, Kenji Shibuya. When I walked into the club, there were about 25 guys lifting weights, seriously, and 10 other guys socializing. The gym owner was an ex-gymnast named Walt, who was in great shape and showed me some moves with light weights. I grabbed the dumbbells, felt the cold steel, and I felt like I belonged here. When Walt got busy helping other members, an older man with red hair named Forrest approached me and said,
"Would you like me to help you train?"
"That'd be great. My name is Nathan."
"My name's Forrest. Let me show you the incline bench press for your chest."
Later that day, I signed up as a club member. It was the first and only time I'd ever paid dues, because after that, people invited me to train at their clubs for free. With my natural potential genetics and physical training, gym owners could see my potential as a bodybuilding champion, so they knew I'd be an asset to train at their gym. One small part of this gym had all the heavy weights in it, from 50 to 200 pounds. That special section also had a protective flooring covered with rubber. All the big guys trained there, and I wanted to go there, but Forrest wouldn't allow me to train in there. A few weeks later, Forrest got sick and didn't show up for 2 weeks, so I started training with the big guys in the off-limits section. When Forrest came back, he was shocked to see me pumping iron in that area. He didn't say anything, but he knew my determination and he could see my potential. I stayed in training that area from then on. I had no ego as far as wanting to show off to others how much weight I could lift. I wasn't interested in being a power lifter. I lifted to develop my body, so I made sure to lift only the weight that I knew I could manage. Thusly, I never got hurt. When I saw Enter the Dragon and heard Mr. Han say,
"We forge our bodies in the fire of our will,"
I knew what he was talking about, and I was doing exactly that. Soon, I was lifting 150-pound dumbbells to work my chest. I had good genetics, so that was in my favor. I trained 10 years before competing. I trained for sports and to keep my body in proper proportions and symmetry. Bodybuilding is not a team sport. It's only you. You get out of it what you put into it. You don't even have to compete. You're walking around on your trophy. I was the only one in high school when I went to state championships in wrestling and track. The teams I played on were not that good, so building my body was just me. I didn't have to rely on any team members who weren't going to put in full effort. I only had to rely on myself. Everything was going perfectly. I now knew my purpose in life clearly, and I had a plan on how to achieve it. I found the perfect gym and a great group of bodybuilders to train with. Life couldn't be better.
"Hey, Nathan, you got a phone call."
I set down the weights that I was pumping and went to the office to answer the call. A call that would really add some weight to my life. A lot of weight.
Chapter 5. If you leave me, I'll kill myself.
I enter Walt's office at the gym, and he hands me the phone.
Here you go, Nathan.
Thanks. Hello, this is Nathan.
Hi, Nathan. It's me, Cindy.
Oh, hi, darling. What a nice surprise. It's good to hear your voice.
Me too. Sorry to bother you at the gym.
No problem.
I just wanted to know if we could have dinner together.
Sure, that would be nice. So what looks good on the menu?
No, I don't know.
You don't seem to be yourself tonight. Is there something wrong?
Well, I guess there is a slight problem. Nathan, I wanted to see you so I can tell you that I'm pregnant.
What? Are you sure?
Yeah, sure I'm sure. That's why I wanted to see you.
Well, that was a game changer for this 19-year-old wannabe sports champion. I felt obligated to marry her. And what the hell? We'd been sweethearts. She was cute, and we were indeed a perfect match. We sure as hell matched up when it came to impregnation. In those days, unwed mothers were rare. Abortion was not only out of the question for me spiritually, it was also illegal. I did what any guy would do in that situation at that time. Quit college, hastily bought a cheap ring, hear the wedding bells, and get a job to support my new family. The local Safeway store needed new meat cutters, so I applied for the job and got it. They sent me to night school for meat cutting. Wow, there was much more to it than I thought. A lot of books with things like weights and measures to learn. Plus working at Safeway in the daytime on a 2-year apprenticeship plan. It's funny that my first movie contract would come, not with working on a film, but learning the business from a man named Fred, who was their old friend's personal meat cutter in Hollywood. I was fortunate enough to be taught by him because Fred was a class act. Once again, I was training with someone older than me. So, at the gym, I was learning to build up my body with beef. And at Safeway at night school, I was learning to cut up cow beef. Unfortunately, soon after we were married, Cindy had a miscarriage, and we lost the baby. Now I know what you might be thinking, but no, she really was pregnant, and we really were both saddened by the loss. After becoming a journeyman meat cutter, I switched over to a big Safeway store in Alameda with a crew of 17 meat cutters. One night, 6 months into our marriage, I came home about 11 p.m. from night school. I was surprised to see that Cindy wasn't there. I waited till 1 a.m., and then I really got worried. So I called her parents, but they hadn't heard from her. Well, the normal fears went through my mind. Auto accident? Kidnapping? Desertion? Having an affair? Finally, a little after 2 a.m., I heard the door being unlocked from the outside, and she comes walking sheepishly in. Hi, honey. Where were you? I was worried, and so were your parents.
Oh, I was with a college girlfriend, and we had some dinner and drinks.
Oh, okay. The needle on my bullshit detector flew all the way into the red. The next day, I packed my clothes and moved back in with my parents. A few days later at work, I'm cutting into a rack of lamb, and who walks into the store? Cindy.
Oh, Nathan, I made a bad mistake. Please forgive me.
Cindy, you can't be here. This is my job, my livelihood.
Oh, Nathan, please, we have to talk. Let me talk.
Not now, not here. Where are you parked?
Out back. I came through the truck area.
You can't be doing this, Cindy. Come on, I'll walk you to your car.
Come home tonight so we can talk.
I don't think so. It's already settled between us.
No, it can't be. If you leave me, I'll kill myself.
That sent shivers up my spine, and I was already cold from working in the meat room. However, long story short, she didn't follow through on her threat, and we got quietly and quickly divorced. I saw her a few months ago at a class reunion. She still looks great, and is now on her 4th marriage. As for me, I stayed single for 20 years because what Oscar Wilde said about marriage, I found out was true.
The one charm about marriage is that it makes a life of deception absolutely necessary.
That was true on Cindy's side, at least.
Chapter 6. Occupation GI Blues.
But then one day my Uncle Sam, he says, here I am. Uncle Sam needs you, boy. I'm going to cut your hair off. Take that rifle, kid. Give me that guitar.
The song lyrics from The All-American Boy were funny to me when I heard them on the radio in 1966. But they sure weren't funny when they were said to me later that same year in a letter from the President of the United States. However, in my case, it was, give me that barbell. I was hooked by the Army, but at least they gave me a year of deferment to finish my apprenticeship. Out of our class of 40, there were only 3 of us to finish the journeymanship license requirement in 15 months instead of 24 months. That's because I really enjoyed the course and was taught at Safeway by a good meat cutter. Finally, my deferment was up, and I took a bus to Fort Ord in Monterey, California, which at that time was under quarantine for meningitis. This meant we couldn't go off base to enjoy the Carmel Valley scenery. But I was just happy not to get sick. When I ran the obstacle course, I hardly tried. Yet, I came in second out of 1,500 soldiers. So they put me in charge of the physical fitness training, which put me on a tall platform every morning, guiding the troops in exercise. I guess that was a precursor for being on a posing platform years later. Soon they made me a squad leader of 22 men. When I finished the 8 weeks of basic training, by chance there was an opening for a journeyman meat cutter at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. So I was soon on a plane there. I considered myself very fortunate to be drafted and yet put into an occupation that was mine. One time our shop radio blared out, "Elvis Presley sings GI Blues," with the lyrics,
I blow my next month pay for a slice of a Texas cow.
"Hey Elvis, I'm slicing up a Texas cow for you right now. Where do you want me to ship it to? I'll take your next month's pay for it." So anyway, reveille was at 5:20 a.m. I get up every morning with the responsibility to get 25,000 troops their daily meat. The meat plant was a mile away. I jogged over to it. I put on my whites, opened up the plant before 28 civilian meat cutters came in at 7:30 a.m. I was the only person in that huge facility doing those hours, so I ate breakfast and set up the place for the day's work. I was in charge of 64 mess halls. Each one had a truck that came to the back dock to load up on the best quality meat in America. That's right. The military gets the best quality of every type of food there is. They bid on items such as eggs, milk, and beef, and pay the highest price to keep the American economy stable. My civilian boss let me off of work around 2 p.m. every day, which gave me time to go to the YMCA off base a few miles away. The weight training room was in a dark basement with no ventilation. It had cobble floors with old-fashioned round dumbbells, instead of the newer ones with plates. But I could make do with them. One time when I was training, there's a huge man walks into the room. He's 6'5" and fills the doorway as he enters. He looks around and spits on the floor.
What a disgusting place this is. Do I have to train in this ugly pit?
Hey, man. Yeah, I know this place is a dungeon, but it's all I have to train in, so respect it. And don't ever spit in here again.
And if I decide to spit on the floor again, what's going to happen?
Then you're going to have a problem.
Oh, yeah? You willing to visit Fish City on this?
It's a place I've visited many times, and I've always loved to return there.
Yeah, sure. All right. You using these dumbbells over there?
No, I'm bench pressing. Help yourself.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to the dungeon.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, I meet a guy training there that's 26 years old. He started talking, and he says he's a bodyguard for President Lyndon Johnson at his ranch about 60 miles away. Oh, yeah, I say. What's he like?
To be honest, he's a real asshole. Very belligerent and uses profanity all the time.
Later, me and some other Army guys drove to Johnson's ranch, but were stopped by security before we can get within 2 miles of the place. I didn't have very many military friends because I was kind of different. Most of the guys on base were 18 to 20 years old. I was 22 and had already been married, betrayed, divorced, and had a trade and been to college. So I was much more mature than most of the recruits there. So I just amused myself with my training, sports, and taking business classes at San Antonio College. However, I was known all over the base. Sometimes while I was walking on base, a car would pass me by and the driver would yell out,
"Hey man, it's Mr. Football!"
I was embarrassed when that happened, but I also thought it was pretty cool. Then one day, working out in the dungeon, I met a fellow Californian named Bill, who was 24 years old. He was an engineer and had worked at Gold's Gym in Santa Monica, California. We had a lot in common. We both went to church, went to college, and lifted weights. He was into the martial arts, what I didn't know anything about at that time. We moved off post and got an apartment together where we built a trophy wall from bricks and boards and immediately started filling it with trophies. Him for target shooting, me for various sports. You see, Army life for the recruits is basically a 40-hour-a-week job, so there has to be something to keep the 25,000 men on base occupied. Thusly, there were a lot of sports to get involved in: football, wrestling, track, and baseball. Our base had 9 different football teams. Neither Bill or I smoked or drank, but there was a nearby college full of women where we often went bird dogging. However, the bird I fell in love with was on base, and she was the mistress of a full bird colonel.
Chapter 7. The Colonel's Mexican Mistress.
As the months went by, working at the meat plant, I kept hearing stories about this beautiful woman who was a personal secretary of the full bird colonel that was in charge of the entire base food service. It seemed like everyone in all 64 mess halls was talking about her. I kept hearing things that the truck driver said like,
"Did you see that gorgeous woman in the colonel's office?"
Wow, I just saw the most beautiful woman I ever seen.
Oh, man. She is drop-dead gorgeous.
Then my boss finally saw her and seemed to be in love with her. But he was married and couldn't take any action on his fantasies. But he kept saying,
"Nathan, you just gotta see her. There's no one like her."
Because I'm in charge of 64 truck drivers, I had to prepare all the paperwork for the food service department. This was usually sent to the colonel's office by couriers. But one day, my curiosity got the best of me. So I decided to deliver reports myself and see what all the fuss was about. That would be the first and only time I'd ever been to see the colonel's office. When I walked into the outer office, there she was. And the rumors weren't wrong. She looked like a Mexican version of Jackie Kennedy, but far more beautiful. I was never aggressive with women. I don't hit on them, as the saying goes. However, I was very attracted to her. At least, that's one thing in common that I had with every guy on the base that saw her. Hello, I'm Nathan LeBlanc. I'm in charge of the meat plant for the base.
Oh, hello. I heard about you. Mr. Football, I think they call you. I heard you were spectacular on the field.
I don't know about that, but I do play.
I'm sure you do. How can I help you?
I have this week's report from my department.
Oh, okay. But don't you usually send them over by courier?
Yes, but I was heading over to practice, and I thought I'd drop them off.
Well, make a touchdown today?
Speaking of touchdowns, I'm playing tonight. Would you like to come and see me play?
Oh, that sounds like fun.
The game starts at 7.
Well, okay. I guess I can be there.
Great. Wait for me after the game so we can talk.
Sure. What's your shirt number, so I'll know who you are?
No need. I'll be the one running with the ball all the time.
Oh, really? Well, I guess they don't call you Mr. Football for nothing.
They don't call me Mr. Football for everything.
Well, see you at the game?
Secretly, I knew that once she saw me play, I'd have a great chance for her to be interested in me. So, Carmen had heard about me? I thought, as I left her office, heard about a player named Nathan, That was spectacular on the field? Maybe she might be thinking that I might be spectacular in other places. Coming on the field that night, I looked around in the stands, but I couldn't find Carmen. But I'd figure she was there someplace. When the opposing team kicks off, I catch the ball. I figured I'm in the end zone, so I touch my knee to the ground so we can take the ball on the 20-yard line. Suddenly, the entire stadium starts booing. What the hell's going on, I wonder? I look around and realize I wasn't in the end zone. I'm on the 1-yard line. With my helmet blocking my peripheral vision, I made an embarrassing blunder. My fans were booing because they wanted to see me run and figure I was afraid of getting hurt. The opposing team fans were booing also because they figured I was chicken as well. Man, was I pissed off. We got into the huddle and my teammates started ribbing me.
What the hell was that, Nathan?
Yeah, what'd you do? Hurt your pinky finger?
No. Hell, I thought I was in the end zone.
Nathan, the end zone is a space marked with the stripes.
Yeah, you can't miss it.
All right, you guys, enough of the wisecrack. I'm pissed off.
Man, listen to him booing.
You want to rest on the bench, Nathan?
Now I'm doubly pissed off. Just give me the damn ball and make a hole in the center.
Jesus, Nathan, don't get him mad on and kill someone.
I don't have to kill anyone because no one's going to touch me. On the snap, the quarterback gives me the ball. I see the hole in the center and head for it. I spin, I straight arm, I jump, and I spin again. Soon there's nothing in front of me but green grass with white chalk marks moving under me and the enemy goals posts moving closer to me every second. In the end zone, I spiked the ball so hard that it bounces 10 feet over my head. It was a 99-yard run. The cheering was deafening. I look up at the stands. I can't see Carmen. God, I hope she's up there. Well, after that run and knowing Carmen was probably in the stands, I was all over the field playing both offense and defense. I've always been the fastest guy on any team I've ever played on and could run the same speed forward or backwards. I averaged 2 touchdowns a game and with an average of over 200 yards per game the first year, and 230 yards the second year and 3 touchdowns per game. The worst game I ever played, I scored 2 touchdowns and averaged 150 yards that game. We won the game that night. When the crowd started leaving and thinning out in the stands, I could see the colonel's beautiful mistress standing at the railing near the 50-yard line. She waves with a big smile. After I changed, Carmen and I went out for coffee, and soon after that, she stopped seeing the colonel and saw me as often as she could. Later, I found out that her great-grandfather had been the president of Mexico. She was 30 years old, charming, educated, and very high class. She lived with her parents in a large hacienda-style house with her 4-year-old son. She was divorced from some rich guy, but I didn't pry into that side of her life. After that, she came to all my games, sometimes with her son, a 4-year-old child, by a wealthy man who had left her. I really enjoyed playing with the beautiful little boy. As my relationship grew with her, so did my relationship with him. The colonel knew who I was, knew Carmen dumped him for me, but he could do nothing about it. I was 22. The colonel was 53. Carmen was 30. It's simple math. 22 can go into 30 more times than 53 can go into 30. And beyond the math, we fell in love with each other. My boss at the meat cutting facility was pissed off that I was involved with her, but he was married. I was single, so he couldn't say anything about that. So he said nothing, but once in a while I saw him giving me that look, but I ignored it. The last year in the Army with Carmen, working in the meat department, training and playing sports, passed quickly. In the last months of my service, an airline pilot named Stanley happened to have a layover in San Antonio and came to see one of my football games. When he saw me play, he freaked out and said to himself, This guy makes the other players on the field look like kids. After the game, Stanley introduced himself to me. It turned out he lived in San Jose, California, just 40 miles from where I lived in Hayward. Stanley got right down to business and said that he'd write a letter of introduction for me to any team I'd like to play for. I said, I'd like to play for the 49ers, and that's what he did. Next came wrestling in all Fourth Army. As for the Army, I came in second in 5 states in the heavyweight class of 214 pounds. So they wanted me to train for the Olympics. However, the catch was that I had to re-enlist. As much as I would have loved to win a gold medal or even silver, my heart was in football. So I told them I would not re-up. On our last night together, Carmen and I went to a Mexican restaurant off base.
Oh, I almost forgot. I had the Cornell write a letter of recommendation for you.
Oh? What exactly is that?
It says that you performed your military service above and beyond the call of duty. It will look good on your military service record and can help you once you get out.
Above and beyond call of duty? Do you agree?
Far above and beyond.
You know, having your ex-lover write a letter like that for your new lover has so much irony in it that I need this knife to cut it.
Yes, it is a little humorous.
But seriously, I really appreciate you doing that for me. That was nice of you.
Well, Nathan, I want to help you and help us in the future once you get out.
I understand.
I've never gone into detail, but my ex-husband is very rich. He has a popular restaurant in San Antonio.
I hope this isn't it.
No, but he's giving my son $200,000, which I can use to raise him until he's 21. He's only 4 years old now, so we can use some of that to live on.
Interesting.
I was thinking that if we get married, we could live here in San Antonio where the houses are inexpensive and you can play on the semi-pro team. It would be a wonderful life for us, and we wouldn't have to worry about anything.
Well, Carmen, that does sound nice. And the fans are crazy about their football in Texas. They have a great team here, 13-0 this year, but semi-pro doesn't pay that much.
Well, anyway, we'll have plenty of money, like I said.
Yes, I know, but my big dream is to play professional football. I'm in the top shape of my life and run circles around everyone. Now's the chance to get into the record books. But I can't do that on a semi-pro level.
Yes, I suppose not.
Have you heard of this new guy everyone's talking about? O.J. Simpson?
No.
Well, he's the first running back in the NFL to gain 2,000 yards in a season. But it took him 16 games. I gained 2,000 yards in only 9 games. He's a running back like me, but I also play defense and punt. So, I'd like to take a shot at breaking all the NFL records.
Yes, I believe you can.
As much as I love San Antonio and you, I have an opportunity with the 49ers that I can't pass up. I have to say that football is my priority.
Yes, I understand.
Look, Carmen, if I make it in 49ers training camp and get on a team, I'll come back and get you.
And if you don't make it?
Well, that's not likely.
But if you don't make it?
Well, if I don't make it, then you won't hear from me again.
Oh, well, then you just better make it.
You can count on it.
Chapter 8. My Whole Life Changes.
When I got out of the service in 1968, I drove my '59 Buick, the Batmobile, back to California without a map, not caring if I was going the long way or the short way. I was happy just to be heading west. Returning home, I stayed at my parents' house for a few weeks. Then I ran into a high school wrestling friend of mine, and we got an apartment together. Since I signed a letter of intent with the 49ers. I concentrated on my training for the next 3 months, at which point I was due at their training camp in Goleta, California. All the recruits stayed at the House of Lords dormitory. We ran 5 miles a day, but I didn't mind. I was in good shape, 212 pounds, all muscle. After a couple of days, a big ape of a recruit named Charlie says to me,
"Hey, Nathan, I know you're good at the 40 or the 50-yard dash, but I can run a 100-yard dash in 9.5 seconds.
Oh, I think I could beat that time.
Yeah, the hell you say. You can't talk to me about it. You have to show me.
Well, that did it. The grudge match was on. We went to the track, and 15 other recruits gathered around to witness the event, the Duel of the Titans. However, instead of Steve Reeves and Gordon Scott, it was Nathan LeBlanc and Charlie the Ape, who did indeed have a reputation for being a super fast runner. We got into the starting position on the track. One recruit blew the whistle, and we were off. I blew him away from the start. I was so far ahead of him that I couldn't even see him in my peripheral vision. Suddenly, when I crossed the finish line, I heard a shotgun blast. I tumbled to the ground and rolled on the dirt. Had I been shot? I must have been. But who would have done such a thing to me? As my body rolled to a stop, I sat up and looked for blood. There was none. The pain hit my leg like a ton of bricks that had landed on it. The trainer ran out of the field, stood over me, and everyone had heard the blast. He looked down at me and said,
"I've been a trainer for 25 years, and I've never heard or seen anyone blow out a hamstring like you did. I could hear it all the way across the field."
They hauled me away in a stretcher and iced my leg for 48 hours straight. A huge bruise the size of a football appeared on my leg. I could hardly walk, let alone run. I limped around for a day or two, but I knew my leg wouldn't heal right. The head coach says to me,
"You don't have to leave, Nathan. You're on the injured reserve. We'll give you room and board, plus give you $100 a day in cash."
I'm not going to be a ball boy, picking up balls for the players. I'm out of here. So I signed a release and left the world of football. I wrote to Carmen about what happened, and she encouraged me to come back to San Antonio. But no way did I want to go back in the condition that I was in, nor did I want to get a regular job there and try to continue our relationship. She repeated about having enough money for both of us, but I didn't want our relationship to continue on someone else's money, hers, her son's, or her ex-husband's. We continued writing sporadically over the next 2 years. Finally, she wrote and said that she was getting married to an Army officer. I was happy for her. We exchanged a few more letters, and after that, we stopped writing. I got a job driving a delivery truck for Coca-Cola. I drove for a year, and then I got a letter from the 49ers to go into their training camp near Sacramento and see how my performance was. I was greeted in Sacramento by 105-degree heat at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When I walked into the camp's office, there were 5 coaches doing paperwork. They all seemed to have me on their pay no attention list, so I said, "Hi, I'm Nathan LeBlanc. I received this letter for tryouts. My leg is still injured, but I can still run a 4.6 40-yard dash." That got their attention. They all looked up in unison.
"Oh yeah? This I gotta see. Let's get on the field."
They all grabbed their stopwatches and headed to the door following me. I ran the 40 yards and registered 4.6 on all 5 watches, 4 consecutive times. Next came the obstacle course with a dozen guys. I ran it lipping and beat every one. Back inside the office, Coach offered me $300 a game. No apartment, no part-time job. I said, "See you later." and walked out the door, leaving the team and the heat to those cheap bastards. Since I was in the Teamsters Union, I worked out of the Teamsters Hall, taking whatever jobs came up. When your number comes up, you take a job. Short jobs or long jobs. After 25 days in the job, they have to lay you off or hire you as a permanent employee. So they hire a driver for 25 days, then they lay him off. 2 months later, they call you back. It's a choice of being independent or taking the job. Even though football was finished with me, and I with it, I kept up my weight training 3 days a week, but just to keep in shape for my job or whatever opportunity might come up. I wasn't into bodybuilding at all, nor knew much about it. It was the same gym that I had trained at before I got drafted, and now I was back. One time, when I was working out, a bodybuilder named Ken McCord, who was just out of the military, walked into the gym to train. Ken approached me when I was bench pressing. He was number 1 on the West Coast, a world-class bodybuilder.
How you doing? I'm Ken.
Hi, I'm Nathan.
Hey, you and I should train together. I used to be like you, but it was no good.
What do you mean?
Well, I used to train 3 days like you, but it wasn't enough. I finally realized how much I was depriving my body by only 3 days a week.
Really? I asked. I'd seen this guy looking at himself in the mirror often and tagged him as a creepy narcissistic who was in love with himself.
Yeah. So let's train together and I'll show you some stuff. What do you say?
Look, man, I train giant sets, supersets, and I train hard. I don't go to the gym to socialize, so I get out of the gym when I'm done.
What do you mean?
I mean that you ought to get away from me. You're a sick dude, and I don't do what you do, so you'd better leave me alone.
Oh, man, that's cold.
If he was going to keep pressuring me, my next move would be to kick his ass. He turned and walked out of the gym with tears in his eyes. That's how much I hurt his feelings. I'm embarrassed to mention this story now, but he was actually complimenting me, but I just didn't understand at the time. I'm telling you this story to illustrate how unknowledgeable I was on the culture of bodybuilding. Indeed, how much the public was unknowledgeable about it as well. Ken won second place in the Mr. America contest and was number 1 on the West Coast. But I didn't know that. However, in a few weeks, Ken and I ended up becoming friends and working out together. Yeah, I like happy endings too.
Chapter 9. The Return of Cindy.
A few years after I got out of the service, my ex-wife Cindy found me through one of our mutual friends. She called me and said,
Nathan, I'd like to have dinner with you and talk.
I heard that she was hooked up with a guy in the Marines and had 2 sons by him. I felt saddened to hear also that he had beaten her up often. Finally, she separated from him, but I hadn't heard what she was up to recently. I felt no need to see her, but my curiosity got the better of me. Or maybe I was just being polite. But I replied on the phone. Okay, that'll be good. I'd like to see you.
Come pick me up in Alameda, 1236 Buena Vista Avenue. When you get here, just honk and I'll come out.
Okay, I'll honk. I pulled up at a small house, honked, and she came right out and jumped into the car. She said a polite hello, good to see you again, and then I took her to a casual restaurant where we ate and talked over old times and did a little catching up, but nothing special came up in our conversation. When I pulled up at her house to drop her off, I asked, "Why didn't you want me to come to the front door?"
Well, I have someone staying with me right now.
Oh, you do? Well, who is it?
Oh, well, it's,
You can tell me. It's not like we're in love anymore.
It's Bobby Lydecker.
Bobby Lydecker, are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
He's one of the top guys in the Devil's Raiders.
Sure, what's wrong with that?
Do you know he's on America's top 10 criminals list?
Well, maybe.
Geez, Cindy, your father's a cop. Your mother works for the police department. What the hell are you doing with him?
Oh, come off it, Nathan. He's a pretty cool guy. And always has a container of cocaine that he leaves on the dresser for me.
Well, what do you say when your ex-wife, someone you were in love with at one time, hits you with that? You can make a wisecrack like Woody Allen says, "Well, I'm due back on the planet Earth." Or be serious and say, "Get the hell out of that house for God's sakes." However, I sighed as I reached over her to open the door and said, "Just be careful, Cindy."
I will, Nathan. Bye. Thanks for meeting me.
It's good to see you, Cindy. I watched her until she was safely in the house and then drove off. Fortunately, she survived that situation to move forward in her life. I bumped into her from time to time over the years at class reunions. The last time I saw her, she was on her 4th marriage, but looked pretty good and seemed happy enough. So I was glad for her.
Chapter 10. On the Teamsters Team.
I was a teamster for 15 years, loading produce trucks for Lucky's warehouse. That had a huge dock with 250 delivery trucks. I worked a graveyard shift from 11 p.m. to 6:30. There were 50 teamsters working there. Only 3 of us were singled. The married guys worked 5 days a week and a lot of overtime. They had families, boats, houses, cars, jet skis to support, via loans and credit cards. So they had to work 12 hours a day to support their life. The other 2 single guys were afraid to lose their jobs, so they worked 5 days a week and a lot of overtime. I had no fear of that because I had my meat cutting to fall back upon. I was always happy, in shape, and had good tan, and a nice car and a motorcycle, and living a dream life that the other workers wished they could, if they weren't burdened with death. So they kind of resented my having to work only 4 days a week to support my lifestyle, and I did not work any overtime at all. I've never been fired from a job because I work hard and don't make mistakes. And no matter who I work for, I give 8 hours of good work for 8 hours of pay. I worked 5.5 hours a day and did the same work they did in 12 hours. I loaded 3 trucks a night in my 5.5-hour shift. They loaded only 2 trucks in 12 hours and got 4 hours of overtime for it. I felt they were milking the company. One time, a guy sitting down for a smoke break called out to me,
"Hey, Nathan, slow down. You're making us look bad."
If I moved any slower, my heart would stop beating. At that time, I was renting a duplex for $125 a month. I had 2 bedrooms with a backyard and a garage. I split the rent with my roommate and lived like that from 1970 till 1982. During that time, I got involved with learning martial arts and training some of those martial artists in bodybuilding. That was where I met a whole new group of great and serious people. Serious about their art and serious in their various businesses. I was very inspired by them.
Chapter 11. Posing at the Paramount.
Hey, Nathan. Frank and I are going to see Steve Reeves. You've got to come along with us.
Who's he?
He's Mr. Universe in bodybuilding and is starring in a movie.
This was 1974, so it was actually a re-release of the Reeves movie that was originally released in 1958. Yet, the distributor was going all out to promote it, with the Reeves look-alike handing out flyers in front of the theater. So Ken McCord, Frank Manifesto, and I head into the giant, luxurious Paramount Theater in Oakland on Broadway. On the marquee, I see the name Hercules in big red letters. Below, I get my first look at Steve Reeves on the poster. Walking into the large, lush lobby, there's a full-size cardboard standee of the movie star Steve Reeves. Man, what a body. He started out in Oakland, California, just like me and my buddies. My friend Frank was a handsome-looking Italian and grew a beard so he would look like his hero, Reeves. I was amazed that they actually did look similar. As he stood next to Reeves' standee, suddenly Frank whips around, looks into a large mirror behind him, and in a single move pulls his t-shirt off over his head and starts posing in the mirror. Ken yanks off his shirt as well, joining Frank in his posing. I look around to see some of the customers smile and shake their heads. I was too reserved at that time to pose in the lobby of a movie theater. After all, this was 1974, and people didn't understand bodybuilders then. There were all kinds of misconceptions about bodybuilding. You could become muscle-bound, your muscles would turn to fat, you're narcissistic, you're homosexual, you're psychotic. One thing the public still hasn't quite gotten an understanding is muscle is muscle and fat is fat. Muscle never turns into fat. Anyway, satisfied with their posing, Frank and Ken put on their shirts. I breathe a sigh of relief, and we take our seats in the theater. At that time, I wasn't much into movies. I was always outdoors in sports, in a car and with a date, cutting beef or cutting up my muscles with high reps and heavy weights. So to see fellow bodybuilders up there on a huge Paramount screen in color and CinemaScope really impressed me. At one point, Hercules stands in the rain with lightning and thunder and says,
I want to live like any other mortal man. It's my prayer to have a family. I want children of my own. To see the children growing up. Thank you, Jupiter, for answering my prayer. Now there's a woman to conquer, and battles to win. And the Cretan bull awaits! The Cretan bull awaits! The Cretan bull awaits!
In the next scene, Hercules fights a man-killer bull, with Reed's bicep bulging as he grips the powerful animal's horns. Man, was I in. A Steve Reeves fan for life. Later, when Reeves was on TV with his wife, promoting his power walking book, his wife said,
I went to see Hercules with my girlfriends, and when Steve was in the rain calling out to Jupiter, I turned to my friends and said, I wouldn't mind having him in the shower. Now when I hear him call out from the shower, where's all the towels? It makes me laugh.
Later, I would become a fan of another bodybuilder who made it in the movies also, Gordon Scott. He was a lifelong friend of Reeves. Scott starred in 6 Tarzan movies as well as 21 others, rising him to fame. His movie Tarzan's Greatest Adventures is considered the best Tarzan movie ever made. Seeing him and Reeves on the big screen gave me an itch to be in the movies. But how would that ever happen? I had no desire to move to Hollywood and to go on auditions, but you'll see, sometimes to have good luck is the most brilliant plan. I would return to the Paramount Theater in 1978 to perform in front of the very screen that I saw Steve Reeves perform on. It was called the Bodybuilding Expo, which was a large production that included Arnold Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, Frank Zane, Jimmy Dutra, Robbie Robinson, Bill Grant, Ed Corning, with a large group of ballerinas dancing around us as we posed. But that would come later. As for me, in 1974, I had a body to build, beef to cut up, and unbeknownst to me, my greatest challenge. Hurricane David awaits.
Chapter 12, The 350-Pound Jerk.
The clean and jerk is actually a weightlifting event, not a bodybuilding one. But I did, unfortunately, become involved with that somewhat. I never competed for an audience. I went to compete against the athletes. I know how to pose and paid my dues in the gym. I had no flaws or weaknesses. I didn't care about the judges or developing an especially large body. I wanted to be symmetrical, so I paid attention to detail to make sure for the maximum muscle gain with no risk of injury. But injured I did get when I had someone train me. Now there's 3 main ways to get injured in weight training: doing the wrong exercise, using too much weight, or dropping the weight on your foot or your head. Training by myself, I never tried for maximum weight, and I only do reps to build muscle, not to see how far I can push my body. Other bodybuilders go beyond muscle failure. I don't, which is why I never need anyone to spot me. I only pick up the weight I need. One time, when I had my competition coming up in 3 weeks, I asked the trainer to help me, and he said,
"Come over here. We'll do your legs. Let's start with 10 or 15 reps with 350 pounds.
I only weighed 200 pounds, but since this guy was in the fitness business for over 15 years and owned a gym, I foolishly decided to follow his instructions. I laid down to do leg presses, and after that 5th rep, I got a triple hernia. He turned beet red, walked away, and left me lying there in pain. It was 3 weeks before my contest. Even though I cannot train anymore, I still placed second in that contest. After the contest, I went to the hospital for an operation. Listening to that trainer's advice, I became the 350-pound jerk. After that, I said to myself, from now on, I'll never let anyone train me. When I got more into the world of professional bodybuilders, I saw how secretive many of them were. I saw them popping pills, taking cocaine, shooting steroids just before competition. I was blown away. I felt like a nun in a whorehouse. When I got on stage, people were assuming that I was taking drugs. But I'm a natural bodybuilder. I practiced my posing routine seriously and finally became outstanding at it, which was why I beat my competition, usually placing 1st or 2nd in all events. When I started bodybuilding in 1974, a trainer named Russell wanted me to take steroids. He said,
"Nathan, I promise that you can win every contest if you take steroids."
I already have ribbons and trophies enough. Why would I want to take steroids? You're a role model, a war hero, a family man. So why would you want me or anyone to impair their health with steroids? Just to win a few lousy competitions? Russell hung his head down with tears coming to his eyes. He didn't say anything, so he turned and walked away back to his office. Later on, I had won 5 or 6 titles, including the Outstanding Bodybuilder of the Year. I was the only bodybuilder at the award banquet. It was all for powerlifters. I had won those titles that year, and I did it naturally, with no steroids at all. A lot of bodybuilders got hurt or even died because they didn't share their information about anabolic steroids among themselves. I guess it was their ego or competitive nature that was their excuse. The drugs they take are all against the law, so that's another reason for them being secretive. So the drug information that they get is mostly from overhearing other bodybuilders talking in the gym. Talking, but not giving out total information. So they proceed with taking steroids through trial and error and take so much that it affects their heart, liver, and kidneys. Being curious, I would ask guys, what kind of steroids are you taking and how much? One guy said,
"Nathan, I'm taking a dozen steroids, and I have no way of knowing what's working and what's not. But don't take the one called L-Dopa, because it causes the pores of your skin to open, making it look like a pig skin.
So these bodybuilders get addicted to the drugs physically. Plus, there's a psychological effect of seeing their bodies grow so fast that they take more and more. People assume that I was taking steroids because I was in such good shape. But I'm proud of myself knowing that I was always drug-free. I got into shape the natural way, training hard, eating right, and taking supplemental vitamins. You know, I could give a lecture on about all the cancerous things that steroids can and most likely will do to your body if you decide to take them. But I'll just tell you what actor Hugh Jackman said when asked if he took steroids to pump up his body when playing the Wolverine.
Me take steroids? Hell no. I'm not going to shrink my balls for a movie.
Chapter 13. I Changed the Sport.
One time, when I was on stage with all of the contestants for the Miss America competition, it was for the prejudging. When I looked down at the 13 judges, there was only 2 that I had recognized. Both of them had been a Miss America and a Mr. Universe. The other 11 judges didn't look like they knew what they were doing, especially one hugely overweight man with thick glasses and puffing on a cigar. I wanted a judge that was in better shape than me and knew something about muscularity and symmetry to decide who was in the best shape. I was never scared to speak my mind when I knew what I was talking about, but if I didn't know what I was talking about, I always kept quiet and listened. But this situation just got to me. So I took a step forward from the lineup and asked the judges, "Just what is the criteria for being a judge?" The entire room went silent because bodybuilders never talked on stage. They hardly talked off stage either. After a few seconds of silence, with no answers coming from any of the judges, I stepped back into the lineup and continued with the prejudging. The truth of the matter was, at that time, there was no criteria to be a judge. Because of being outspoken, I think I was blackballed from the sport for a long while. However, because of that incident, I changed the whole sport. Now you have to go to a special school to become a bodybuilding judge. You also have to sit on a prejudging event for 6 months with your vote not counting before you can become a judge. Now judges get paid, room, board, and even other perks. So yes, being outspoken hurt me in the sport, but nobody could deny the perfection of my physique. Another thing that I contribute to the bodybuilding sport, that I was one of the first men to put on a posing exhibition with a woman. Frank Zane posed with his wife, and then I did it with a female bodybuilder. After that, they started a mixed pairs competition. So I changed the sport in a lot of different ways.
Chapter 14. My First Bar Fight.
So here I am at a seedy bar in Berkeley, California. It's 1977. I'm 35 years old, dressed in black pants, a tank top, guarding the door, ready to bounce on anyone that gets out of line in this place. I'm keeping my eye on a young red-headed topless dancer to make sure that she isn't manhandled by any of the drunks. In walks this drunk guy who stops in front of her, giving her the eye. As the stage is low, he could reach out and grab a handful at any moment. So I walk over to him, put my hands on my hips, and give him a good lat spread. When he sees my back muscles spread out like a flying bat, he gets the picture right away and moves on down to the end of the bar. The dancer gives me a thank you wink. I nod, smile at her, and go back to my space at the door. I see the drunk approach 2 of my bodybuilding friends, Benny and Big Ben, sitting at the end of the bar. Ben motions to the drunk with his glass as if he's offering to give him a drink. But when the drunk approaches him, he throws his drink in his face. The drunk hits Benny in the face, and the fight starts with two of them. I run over, knock aside the two Bens, grab the drunk, and put him into an arm lock and hold him down.
Cut, print that one. Okay, let's set up for the next shot.
That shot was good? You don't need another take?
Yeah, that was perfect. Let's rehearse the next shot.
Wow, that was easy. After all the stories I've heard about movie directors screaming and yelling?
Well, if you want, I'll scream and yell at you in the next shot.
No, that's okay. I like it this way. That was my first shot of the first movie I'd ever worked on. Its title is Weapons of Death. It stars my friends Eric Lee and Sid Campbell, whom had worked with this director, Paul Kyriazi, in another movie called Death Machines. Sid introduced me and the two Bens to Paul, who cast us in the bar fight scene. The rest of the scene would be with an actor and martial artist, Ralph Castellanos, coming to the bar to rescue his drunk friend, and a large fight's happening between all of us, including the bartender jumping in on it. Near the end of the scenes, I hit Castellanos with a chair, and he flies into a stack of bottles. But he comes back, beats me up, and hits my head against the wall. Of course, he's protecting me so my head misses the wall by an inch or so. But a board comes loose on the wall, and my forehead hits it, cutting me. Not wanting to do this take over again, I stay in character and take the final punches and fall to the floor. On screen, the board coming loose looks great, but it sure didn't make my head feel good. When the director called cut, he and the others came over to see if I was okay. I told them that I was, and not to worry about it. Benny, my workout partner, was especially worried. I said, "Don't worry, Benny. This movie is our immortality," and I meant it. A year went by while the film was being edited, at which point Paul, the director, said he needed money to have the beginning and the end credit produced, which cost $3,000. So to help out, as the others of the cast had invested money into it, I bought 1% of the movie for $1,786. Paul said he would guarantee it personally, and I believe him. A few years went by, and the next time I saw Paul, he was trying to finish the movie Ninja Busters, which he and Eric Lee and Sid Campbell were producing with another martial artist, Carlos Navarro. They asked me to play a part in the movie which had a lot of dialogue to memorize. I knew it was going to be a challenge, but I like challenges. Since the independent production was out of money, Paul asked me if I would work on it on a deferred basis. He also said that he hadn't forgotten about the 1% on the Weapons of Death. But the distributor hadn't returned any of the profits, even though it had shown around America and many other countries. I told Paul not to worry about it, and we got on with the scene for the Ninja Busters. In that action comedy movie, I played a Vietnam veteran. Sid and Eric come to my house to ask for help fighting ninjas. After giving them a long-winded speech about being a quick draw with a pistol and that is always on my side, a ninja jumps into the room and instantly kills me. When Ninja Busters were shown at the cast screening, I wasn't in town to see it. However, 22 years after making Weapons of Death, Paul comes walking into my sports store. I hadn't seen him since he came to the store opening 15 years earlier. Paul, what are you doing here?
Well, remember your Weapons of Death investment?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's payback day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You invested $1,786. The other official investors got tax write-offs for 5 years, but since you invested with me personally, you didn't, so I'll pay you back now.
Okay, cool.
First of all, I'll round it up to $2,000.
Oh, great.
And I'll add another $1,000 on top for a total of $3,000. So, here's the check.
Wow, thanks.
You know, Nathan, all these years of making movies and living as a freelancer, I never had any savings, but I just got some extra money recently, so just now was able to pay you. I thought it was just a few years ago that I made that movie, but today when I was putting the date on the check, I realized it was 22 years ago.
Yeah, time flies. 13 years later, I hear Paul's voice on my message machine.
Hey, Nathan, this is Paul. The only print of Ninja Busters was found in the Mojave Desert by a film collector. It was shown at a film festival, became a hit with the audience, and it was made into a Blu-ray. Give me your address and I'll send you a copy. And there's also going to be a screening and a party for it in a few weeks. Hope to see you there.
The reason that I want to elaborate on the story is that I discovered that people in the martial arts or physical fitness, which Paul is one, usually have a generosity of spirit. Most of them avoid anything petty and are giving in nature. There is also a strong feeling of community with everyone in bodybuilding and martial arts. For example, Sid Campbell raised a boy that needed a home, just because the boy needed one. Sid let him live at his karate studio, learn karate, and later teach at the school. And Sid is not the only one that I've heard to do such a generous deed. Paul paying back his close friends who had helped him with his dream is just one example of camaraderie in the health and bodybuilding and martial arts world. Paul recently reminded me of the time that I drove an hour to his apartment to teach him the basics of bodybuilding. He said he had never forgot that and kept his training up to this day. This is why, to this day, I am always ready to teach bodybuilding to anyone. It can change lives and sustain lives also. Paul told me that at the New York showing of Ninja Busters, my death scene at the hands of the ninjas, after I gave the arrogant, macho speech, gets the biggest laugh from the audience. When I watched the films with the audience at another screening, I did indeed get the biggest laugh, which really made me feel great, 30 years after filming it. I guess I was right when I told Benny, this is our immortality. In the middle of writing this book, I got a call from Paul to do a voice character in his new audiobook called Wicked Players. It was only a supporting part, but significant in the fact that it was the first part I got just for my acting ability and not my physicality. Another reason for mentioning these incidents is that it proves if you stay connected with the people and do a good job when they call, you'll never know when your phone might ring again and you're off on some new adventure. And if the phone doesn't ring, that's okay too, if you're living the lifestyle that you want daily. A few months after recording Wicked Players, my phone did ring, and I got a word that Ninja Busters will be shown in San Francisco Theater with the cast and crew to be interviewed on stage. Cast? Oh yeah, that's me. So you see, when you take a chance and work on a project, it keeps paying off, if not in money, then in good times with good friends. To quote Captain Ahab in Moby Dick,
"Money is not the measure, man. It will fetch me a great premium. Here."
And then Ahab pats his heart.
Chapter 15. I don't date smokers.
The Manor Gym was not co-ed in 1974, but they did have men and women's days. Women's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, men's were Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank God I happened to be driving by the gym on women's days, just in time to see a beautiful blonde girl jump out of her Toyota in tights and go bouncing into the gym. She's of medium height with an athletic build. Even though I trained women and judged women's bodies at contests, I'd never seen a body like that. I hit the brakes, spun an illegal U-turn, parked, and ran into the gym like a bull moose charging at his mate. Inside, I see the girl talking to one of the trainers. I walk over to the receptionist's desk. Now, I've known Betty, the receptionist, for a long time, so I don't hesitate to ask her. Say, Betty, who's that girl over there?
Her name's Marla. Why? Is this another woman in your crosshairs?
Nah, nothing like that. But could you introduce me to her?
No way, Nathan. You go arrange your own dates. I'm not going to help you. Besides, Marla's a nice girl.
Well, I'm a nice guy.
Yeah, but geez, Nathan, even God rested on the seventh day.
What is this, Betty? Are you working on a lounge stand-up act?
Yeah, that's right. I'm performing in the sauna tonight.
Come on, just a quick introduction.
You're on your own, Tarzan.
Okay, I think I can handle it. Because I think she just might be Jane. I wait a few moments until Marla's finished talking with the trainer, and as she moves away, she heads towards the changing room. I head her off at the pass. Hello, I'm Nathan LeBlanc. I've been training here for a long time. You must be new here.
Not too new. I've been here a month or so.
Betty over there says your name is Marla.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I wanted her to introduce us, but she's a little busy.
Oh, no problem, since you train here too.
I know you're about to work out, so I don't want to bother you. But can I ask if you're married?
Wow, you got around to that one in a hurry.
Yes, I guess so, but sometimes important opportunities happen, and then they're gone.
That's true. Well, no, I'm not married.
In that case, would you like to have dinner with me?
Is that a pack of cigarettes in your shirt?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I could never date a smoker.
I pull out the pack of Marlboros, turn and see a wastebasket about 10 feet away. I make a basketball shot. I hit the rim. It bounces to the floor, but I've made my point. I'll never smoke again. I promise you.
Just like that?
Yes. I wasn't much of a smoker anyway. And if I can give up ice cream and pie for bodybuilding, I can easily give up tobacco for you.
Oh, yeah? Am I pie and candy to you?
More than that, I think. So, how about dinner? For instance, how about dinner tonight?
How many guesses do I get?
6.
6 guesses?
6 o'clock.
Oh, I'm going to have to bring my A game to the restaurant tonight.
That's not necessary. Just bring your appetite.
I'm sure you'll bring yours.
I'm starving already.
Well, okay. Pick me up here at 6. See ya.
That night, I took her to the Moonraker restaurant, located right next to the ocean at Pacifica, California. That's where I was not surprised to find out that Marla was not only beautiful outside, but a beautiful, intelligent person as well. She was 10 years younger than me and still living with her parents. Eventually, she got her own place. And even though I always kept my duplex, I was at her place most of the time, with many of my things moving from my place to her place. After 7 years of adventurous dates, one day she hits me with,
Nathan, you're either going to marry me or you're going to have to move out.
Set the date.
What?
Set the date.
Just like that?
Sure. If you had asked me in our first year of dating, I would have said, set the date then.
You sure are full of surprises, Mr. LeBlanc.
Well, I never want to disappoint. We honeymooned in Maui. It rained constantly for the first 4 days. We didn't care. But when the sun did come out, we hit the nearby beaches, making it all that more wonderful. Marla was more than I ever wanted, more than I ever expected. The most beautiful lover, wife, friend, and then mother.
Chapter 16. Virgin in a Biker Bar.
You know, I've been involved in many business ventures to better my finances, but this next story takes the prize for unbelievability. But it's true. I got to know a millionaire equipment designer by the name of Randolph Henderson. He lived in Oakland, and at one point he asked me to design and run a high-class gym in Carmel, California. It would be housed in a gorgeous building with the state-of-the-art equipment. I would be in charge of it all. So it would be a great situation in one of the most beautiful places in America. Also involved in the $250,000 deal was Henderson's friend, Mr. Sanchez, who created the first multi-weight universal gym. So I was in good company with two prosperous and creative businessmen. Though married, Mr. Henderson had a girlfriend. I'll call her Angel. She looked like one with long blonde hair and a petite body. She was 23 years old. He was 80. Yeah, right. Once again, do the math. But I didn't get involved with her. In the first place, she not only wasn't my type, I was with Marla by that time. So I was just looking to move up in life and provide security for my family. And in the second place, it's best not to bang the mistress of the hand that feeds you. Anyway, Henderson supported her and gave her a Corvette to zip around Carmel in. He also set her up in an apartment, so she was really riding very high on the gravy train, enjoying herself. So she was no problem for me. I busied myself making Henderson's dream of his Carmel gym come true. I was in charge of training, sales, basically the entire setup. One day, I was driving by a bar nearby Monterey and felt like relaxing before a long drive back to Hayward, with a beer and a game of pool. You know, just to mellow out. When I entered the place, who do I see? Right, Angel. But she wasn't in her usual angelic white dress. She was in tight jeans and a leather vest, showing a lot of skin and curves. She was shooting pool with a biker and had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth and a mug of beer that she was grabbed and gulped between shots. I ordered a beer at the bar and then turned facing the pool room. Angel had just missed a pool shot and was grabbing her beer mug and lit a cigarette. She took a gulp and put the cigarette to her mouth. When suddenly she sees me. Whew! I wish I had a photo of the double take she gave me so I could put in this book. It was the look of a nun being caught in the barracks full of drunken soldiers. Sure, I was there too, but I'm more of a soldier than a nun. She approached me and says,
"Oh, hey, Nathan. What are you doing here?"
I dropped by for a beer and chill out for a few minutes.
"Oh, yeah, me too. I usually don't come here, so I hope you don't mention this to anyone."
I think that guy's waiting for you to shoot.
"Oh, yeah. Okay.
Use plenty of chalk on your cue."
Yeah, right."
Angel looks at me strangely, perhaps wondering if my words had hidden meaning. But they didn't. I just didn't want to say anything that would commit myself to her request for secrecy. I finish my beer halfway and leave. Nothing came of the incident until a few weeks later when Henderson tells me,
"Say, Nathan, I want you to start training Angel to be a nutritionist and personal trainer in our gym. She'd be good at that."
"Well, Mr. Henderson, I'm sure she'd be great working in our gym as a receptionist or public relations, but how can I give her 20 years of my experience in a few months before opening?"
"Just do it, so we can get this gym opened on schedule."
"Okay, whatever it takes to keep the show on the road." A few years after that incident, I went into theater to see Superman 3 with Marla. When the billionaire businessman Robert Vaughn introduces his young, sexy mistress as my psychic nutritionist, I let out an uncontrollable, loud horse laugh. Marla looked at me and wondered, what was so funny? So anyway, now I'm meeting a lot with Sanchez about planning and opening up our super gym and teaching Angel about nutrition. Even though she pretends to be interested in learning nutrition, I can see that she's probably thinking about getting back to her bar and bikers. Finally, I tell Sanchez that we'd better tell Henderson about Angel and her attraction to bikers and bars. My feeling is that if Henderson finds out on his own, it's going to blow the whole deal with the gym. He gets pissed off at Angel and cancels the whole thing. I'd rather him cancel it sooner than after I've relocated down to Carmel. Sanchez agrees. He doesn't want to relocate either and then have the gym blow up in our faces and lose a 1-year lease on the apartments. So Sanchez goes to see Henderson. When Sanchez tells him about seeing Angel at the biker bar, Henderson says,
Nathan is lying. I don't want to hear any more of his lies, so just drop it.
When Sanchez relayed Henderson's response, all I could say to him was the old adage, there's no fool like an old fool in love. Finally, 2 weeks before the grand opening, Henderson picks me up with Angel, and we drive down to Carmel to finalize everything. When this project started out, there was just me, Sanchez, and Angel involved in the gym. 3 of us to split the profits. But now Henderson has 7 of us involved, including carpenters and other trainers and investors. Still, I figure things will work out, so I ride in the back seat with Henderson driving and Angel sitting next to him. The conversation about the possibilities of the gym is easy, and nothing is brought up about Angel's love of smoke, alcohol, and Harley riders. At the meeting, there are 8 of us, and things go smoothly until Henderson says to me,
I'm sorry, Nathan, but now that we have a 7-way split, I can't afford to pay you what we talked about.
But Mr. Henderson, we agreed on that from the beginning.
Yes, I know, but that was then, and this is now.
Unless you stick to the original deal, I'm sorry. I can't afford to relocate for so little money.
Take it or leave it, Nathan.
This gym will go under without me.
Be that as it may, take it or leave it.
Then with respect, Mr. Henderson, given the fact that you're reneging on our deal, I have to bow out.
Okay then, the gym is off. Stop construction and return the money to the investors.
Henderson, Angel, and I rode back to Hayward in complete silence for the 90-minute trip. He dropped me off at my place with a polite good night. I said good night to both of them and got out of the car. I thought Henderson might change his mind and call me later, but he never did. The customers that bought memberships in the club were refunded, and Henderson went on with his business, and I continued with the Teamsters. And Angel, I imagine that she eventually blew it with Henderson. Once the doubt of her purity was put into his mind, she probably went back to her bar, bikers, beer, and billiard balls.
Chapter 17, David and Goliath.
Steve Reed starred in Goliath and the Barbarians. But this final story is more about me meeting the barbarians and seeing Goliath slain by David. In 1979, I get a phone call coming from my karate sensei and martial arts actor Tadashi Yamashita.
Hey, Nathan, I need you to do some fight scenes in my movie right away. It's called The Magnificent 3. Can you make it?
Sure. Are you in Hollywood?
No. I'm calling from the Dominican Republic.
What the hell's that?
It's next to Cuba. We'll pay you and send you a ticket. You have 3 scenes where you fight 3 different martial artists who use different styles.
Sounds like I'm going to get my butt kicked a lot.
Yes, but it'll be great.
Okay. I'm in, I guess.
Right. Start packing. I'll start making arrangements.
I get off the plane and enter the Santo Domingo airport. I'm surprised to see that they're making the movie right there, with a lot of extras, wearing soldiers' uniforms with bullet belts across their chest. Most of them carrying both pistols and sawed-off shotguns. They really look badly cast. Character actors too much in character to be believed. The cliché of a whacked-out, corrupted third-world renegades. But I'm not directing this movie, so I shrug it off. I look around for Tadashi, but I don't see him. I look for the cameras, but it's not in sight. I walk up to one of the extras. As I approach him, his hand goes to a shotgun strapped to his chest. Hi, I'm Nathan LeBlanc. Where's the set?
What set are you talking about?
The movie set. I'm here for the Magnificent Three.
What are you talking about? We're under martial law here. You keep walking.
Okay. Wow, I came for a martial arts movie, and this country is under martial law? Tadashi left that part out. And I'm getting a little pissed off at being led down the garden path. I continue walking through the airport, past more and more badass-looking soldiers, and wish they actually were extras in Tadashi's movie. Near the front door, I see a man holding a sign with my name. It's a taxi driver that Tadashi sent. He takes me a few miles to the El Embajador Hotel. Well, now we're talking. I think as I see it, it's a super luxury 7 floors, 100 rooms per floor, Olympic-sized swimming pool, 2 casinos. My room's on the 4th floor with a view of the bay. They let me rest for a few days, and then we started filming at an old broken-down mission a few miles away. It was hard work fighting each of those men with many takes and various camera angles. But I liked it. After fighting each man, I had to fight all 3 of them at once. We're in the middle of the 3rd week, with just 2 more days to go on my section of the filming. There had been a hurricane warning the day before, but it never came. We figured it had passed us by. I remembered looking up at a 50-foot pillar that Tadashi was standing on, waiting for the camera to be set up for a shot, when suddenly the sky darkened. The pigeons took off, but had a difficult time staying in the air, as if someone was hindering them. I hear the director over the bullhorn say,
"We better get back to the hotel. Grab the camera and the sound equipment and get in the vans."
By the time we reached the lobby, the wind and rain were blowing like we were in a wind tunnel. All the giant windows in the deserted lobby had been blown out, and the glass chandeliers were swinging wildly from the ceiling. Since the hotel was on a hill, we weren't worried so much about waves coming in to drown us, but the power of the storm was scary. I went to the deserted bar on the top floor to take a look at the town. I could see waves covering 4-story buildings in the town below us. Now I wasn't sure how much safety that this hill would provide us. Later I found out that those waves killed over 2,000 people, and the storm was named Hurricane David, with winds reaching 175 miles per hour. I went back to my room on the 4th floor, which was a good thing, because a few minutes later, lightning hit the top of the hotel, crashing the concrete roof into the 7th floor, destroying the bar that I had just been standing in. In my room, the wind and the rain pounded my window harder and harder. Then I heard a boom, 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 which sounds like 3 shotgun blasts in the hall. I looked out in the hall. No one was there. I heard the sound again and realized it was the windows on the other side of the hotel crashing in. I figured it was time for me to head to the basement. But what about Tadashi and the other actors? I headed down the hall to their room. I opened Tadashi's door to see him and 4 other actors playing cards, with the storm raging outside in the windows. Hey, we'd better get down to the basement, I tell them. Before they can answer, boom! The window explodes, sucking cards, money, and papers out the window. The noise of the storm is deafening. The guys hit the floor and are almost sucked out as well. I grab the door jamb and reach out my hand to Tadashi. He grabs it. The other guys grab Tadashi's hand and each other's hand. We are now a human chain. The wind feels like it's a giant vacuum cleaner trying to suck us out the window. I managed to pull the line of guys out into the hall, like landing a string of fish. We head down to the cellar, where the rest of the residents and the hotel staff are gathered. Soon there's silence. The wind stops. The sun comes out. It's the eye of the storm, which only lasts a minute. Then the wind, the rain, the noise, and all hell starts all over again. 15 minutes later, the noise stops as Hurricane David continues on its way. When we make our way to the lobby, it looks like a garbage dump. I look outside and see palm trees in the swimming pool and more destruction. The Goliath of a hotel had been slain by David the Hurricane. The newspaper says 600 killed, but it was an early report. Unfortunately, the final count was over 2,000. With the power out for the next 3 days, I'm forced to live on crackers, canned sardines, and sodas. Not exactly what a bodybuilder's best diet is. We return to the old mission, which hadn't been touched at all, and continue filming. When we finish, I take an unscheduled flight home. Landing in San Francisco, I promise myself never to leave the United States again. And I never have. I was never able to see the movie, as it didn't come to America, but at least I made the poster.
Chapter 18. Keep Pumping.
I've played on football teams with players that went on to professional greatness. Too many to list here. I've trained people in various sports that went on to win awards. I've acted in movies with directors, casts, and crews that continue producing and performing. Working with those people in the past motivated me in my life. You know, movie roles, bodybuilding events only happen a few times a year, if that. So I believe that you can't just wait for those big events to happen. You have to love the daily training and the daily lifestyle of doing what you love, to live life fully. My daughter, Alina, was born in 1990, and my son, Hunter, was born in 1993. Besides Marla, they are the reason that I continue to train and try to stay in the best shape that I can. I've really enjoyed the 4 months it's taken me to write this book. And even while writing it, new projects have come up for me to participate in. So I have no way to end my book, because there is no end. However, if you allow me, I will paraphrase my hero Steve Reeves as Hercules, when he gives up his immortality and becomes human. I'm living like other mortal men. I have a family, and I saw my children grow up. Thank you, Jupiter, for answering my prayer. Now I have projects to finish, a body to perfect, and students to train. And the next adventure awaits. And the next adventure awaits. And the next adventure awaits.
This has been the Ronin audiobook production of Pumping My Way, written and performed by Nathan LeBlanc. It was directed by Bruce Dowling, produced by Jan Van Tassel, associate producer Ron Huff. Other performers include Nathan's longtime friends Harry Mock, Roger Glenn, William Martell, Paul Kyriazi, Jan Van Tassel, Bruce Dowling, and some new friends Julia Ramos, Josie Barber, Janet Engelbert, Cal Waite, Christina Ramos, Melinda Johnson, and Jarrell Bromley. Marla LeBlanc was played by me, Marla LeBlanc, who else? Thanks for listening.
Cut. Perfect. Thanks, Marla.
That was beautiful.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good job, babe.
You weren't so bad yourself. You know, doing this makes me want to go back to Maui.
Set the date.
Oh, again?